The Forbidden Union. The Sci-Firian Empire had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Their kind was strong, disciplined, and perfectly evolved for war. They believed in purity, in power, and above all else, they saw humans as weak. The very idea of mixing Sci-Firian blood with a lesser species was an insult, an abomination. That was why Commander Lyra couldn't let anyone find out the truth. She was carrying a hybrid, a child that should not exist. The moment everything changed, Lyra stood in front of the med scanner, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been feeling different, stronger, faster. At first, she thought it was just exhaustion from her last mission, a brutal battle against a rebel faction in the outer colonies. But something was wrong. Her body was changing. And now, the medical scan was about to confirm her greatest fear. The machine hummed, processing her DNA. Then, a red warning flashed across the screen. GE-NEATCANOMALYDT. Lyra's breath caught. No, this is impossible. Her golden Typhurian eyes narrowed as she stared at the data. The readings were clear. Inside her body was a life form that was not fully Sci-Firian, half human. Her claws dug into the metal table. This could not be happening. The unthinkable truth. Lyra's mind raced. Sci-Firian biology was designed to reject foreign DNA. It was impossible for a hybrid to exist. And yet, she was carrying one. Her breathing grew shallow as memories flooded back. It was him, Dr. Ethan Voss, the human scientist she had met on the warfront, the man who had saved her life when she was wounded in battle. She had hated him at first, a human working alongside her people. Unacceptable. But he was different, clever, fearless, and he had done something no human had ever done before. He had earned her trust. That night, after the battle, they had been alone. The war had almost taken her, and in that moment, she had felt something strange, a connection. She had ignored it, forgotten it. But now, the proof was inside her, and if the Empire found out, they would kill them both. A deadly decision. Lyra's hands trembled. She had two choices. Report herself to the Sci-Firian High Council. Accept punishment. Let them erase the child and cleanse her tainted genetics. Run. Hide. Find Ethan Voss. Find answers. Her entire life, she had been loyal to the Empire. She had fought, killed, and bled for it. But now she was the enemy. Her hand moved to her stomach. A Sci-Firian child developed quickly, even faster than a human one. She could already feel it. Its presence. Its strength. No, she wouldn't let them take it. She wouldn't let them erase what was growing inside her. For the first time in her life, she turned her back on the Empire. She was going to Earth, to find Ethan, to find out what this child truly was, and to protect it, no matter the cost. Cliffhanger. The hunt begins. Lyra took a deep breath, pulling her hood over her head as she stepped into the docking bay. The Sci-Firian security forces were already looking for her. She needed to move fast. As she boarded the stolen stealth transport, she entered the destination, Earth. Then, just as the ship launched into hyperspace, a red alert flashed on every screen across the Empire. Fugitive alert. Commander Lyra. Termination order issued. The Empire was coming for her. For the first time in history, a Sci-Firian was on the run, carrying a secret that could change the future of both species. And if she failed, she would never be remembered, because the Empire would make sure she never existed. The secret she can't hide. The stars blurred into streaks of light as Commander Lyra's stolen ship sped toward Earth. She gripped the controls, her mind racing. She had betrayed her empire. She had abandoned everything she once believed in, and all for a child that shouldn't even exist. A child that, even now, she could feel changing her. The chase begins. Behind her, the Inferior High Council was already moving. The moment she escaped, a galactic-wide alert was issued. Fugitive, Lyra, charges, genetic contamination, treason, kill on sight. And worse, the Empire had sent hunters, Sci-fian elites, the deadliest warriors in the galaxy. They weren't coming to capture her. They were coming to erase her. The changes begin. Lyra's body felt wrong. As her ship moved through hyperspace, she sat against the cold metal floor, breathing hard. Her muscles felt denser, her vision sharper. She looked at her hands. The faintest traces of human skin tones were appearing on her once perfect Sci-fian silver. Her claws retracted, her fingers flexing differently than before. Her heart beat stronger, but not just hers. She could feel a second pulse. Her child. Something new. Something powerful. And the more she felt it, the more she knew the truth. This was not just a mix of two species. This was something beyond both. Arrival on Earth. Lyra's ship pierced through the blue atmosphere, the engine screaming as it entered Earth's gravity. Earth, the place she was taught to despise. Now, it was the only safe place left for her. She set the landing coordinates to a hidden human research facility, the only place where she could find Dr. Ethan Voss, the father of the child. She didn't know if he would accept her. She didn't know if she could trust him. But she had no other choice, because the Inferior hunters were already tracking her, and if she didn't move fast, she would never get the chance to tell them what he had created. The scientist who knew too much. At a secret underground lab in the mountains of Earth, Dr. Ethan Voss was already staring at something impossible, a biological scan of Lyra's DNA. She had sent the data ahead before arriving. And what Ethan saw terrified him. Her DNA wasn't just mutating. It was rewriting itself. Impossible, he whispered. Human and Sci-fian genes were never meant to combine. They were too different, too incompatible. Yet somehow, it was working. The child growing inside her was something new. And worse, it was adapting to both parents' strengths. Stronger than a Sci-fian, smarter than a human, faster than either. A true hybrid. And if the Inferior Empire found out, they wouldn't just kill Lyra. They would wipe out Earth to prevent more hybrids from ever being born. Ethan turned as an alarm blared. A ship had landed. She was here. And behind her, the Sci-fian hunters were coming. Cliffhanger. The hunters arrive. Lyra barely made it to the entrance of Ethan's lab before her entire body tensed. A presence. No, multiple presences. She turned her head sharply. In the sky above, 3 Sci-fian warships decloaked. Her pursuers had arrived. They had found her. And they weren't here to negotiate. Ethan stepped out of the lab, his expression tense. "They're already here?" he asked. Lyra's hands clenched into fists. She could already feel it. The child inside her, it knew. And for the first time, it responded. Her vision flickered. She saw things before they happened. A battle she hadn't fought yet. A future where she was either dead or something more. Ethan saw the change in her eyes. "What's happening to you?" he whispered. Lyra exhaled. "It's not just me." She placed a hand on her stomach. "It's the child." Then she looked at him, face unreadable. "If we survive this night, nothing in the galaxy will ever be the same again." The Sci-fian hunters landed, and the war for the hybrid began. Hunted by her own people, the air was thick with tension. The Sci-fian hunters had arrived. 3 sleek, black warships hovered in the dark sky above Earth, their presence a silent declaration. Surrender or die. Lyra's pulse pounded in her ears. She had faced death 100 times before. But this time, it wasn't just her life on the line. It was the life growing inside her. And she could feel it. The hybrid was awake. The first strike. A voice boomed from the warships. Commander Lyra, you are charged with treason and genetic corruption. Surrender now. She took a slow breath. Then, she did something her species had never seen before. She stood her ground. I am not the traitor, she growled. You are. For the first time in Inferior history, one of their own had defied the Empire. And the response was instant. The lead hunter, Kale, stepped forward. He was taller than Lyra, his golden eyes sharp like blades. She had trained with him, fought alongside him. And now, he was here to kill her. A whisper passed between the hunters. This will be quick. Then, Sereth moved, faster than light. A blade flashed toward Lyra's throat. The hybrid fights back. Time slowed. Lyra's vision shifted. She saw the attack before it happened. Not just instinct, not just training. Something deeper. She ducked before she even thought about it. The blade missed. Sereth's eyes widened in shock. But Lyra wasn't surprised. Because it wasn't her reflexes. It was the child. Her muscles burned with new energy. Her mind processed movements faster than ever before. The hybrid was helping her fight. And for the first time in her life, Lyra felt fearless. Ethan seized the truth. Inside the lab, Dr. Ethan Voss watched the fight through the security feed. His hands shook. Lyra was moving too fast. Her strength, her reflexes, she was becoming something new. And then the lab scanner beeped. He turned, and his heart stopped. The data was clear. The hybrid wasn't just changing her. It was adapting in real time, becoming stronger, becoming something beyond human and Sci-Firian. He swallowed. The Sci-Firians feared this child. Now, he understood why. The hunters realized too late. Outside, Sereth growled. This is unnatural, he spat. Lyra's stance did not waver. No, she said. This is the future. Sereth lunged again. But this time, she was ready. Her hands moved before she willed them to. She sidestepped, striking his ribs with a force that sent him flying. The other hunters hesitated. They had never seen a Sci-Firian move like this. Lyra could feel it now. Her body was still changing. And she wasn't just fighting to survive. She was winning. The war begins. Sereth rose, his face twisted in rage. He looked at the other hunters. Enough, he hissed. We do not need her alive. The hunters drew their weapons. Lyra's claws extended. Ethan ran out of the lab, shouting, We have to leave. Now. But it was too late. The sky erupted in fire. The Typherian fleet had begun its attack. This was no longer just a hunt. This was war. And Lyra and her unborn child were at the center of it. The child that shouldn't exist. The sky was on fire. Sci-Firian warships loomed over Earth, their weapons glowing with energy. This was no longer a hunt for Lyra. This was extermination. And yet, as the first plasma blasts rained down, Lyra did not run. She stood her ground. Her claws flexed. Her body hummed with power. Because she knew one thing now. She wasn't alone anymore. The child inside her was waking up, and it was ready to fight. Earth's last decision. Inside Earth's global defense headquarters, military leaders screamed over each other. Do we surrender her? Do we fight? We can't take on the Typherians. Then a new voice spoke. Strong. Calm. Absolute. Yes, we can. All heads turned. Admiral Wren Carter, commander of Earth's defense fleet, stood up. She came here for protection, he said. And if we hand her over, we prove them right. Silence. Then, the decision was made. Earth's fleets launched into the sky. For the first time in history, humans and Sci-Firians were at war. And all because of one unborn child. The hybrid awakens. Lyra stood in the burning battlefield, surrounded by Sci-Firian hunters. They thought they could still kill her. They thought she was just one of them. But she could feel it now. The child inside her wasn't just growing. It was adapting. Her senses expanded. Her muscles tightened. And when the first hunter charged her, she moved before he did. Faster than ever. Stronger than ever. She wasn't just fighting. She was evolving in real time. Ethan's discovery. Inside his lab, Dr. Ethan Voss was running the last DNA scan, and when he saw the results, his hands shook. This isn't just a hybrid, he whispered. It's something else. The child wasn't just combining sci-fian and human genetics. It was perfecting them, building something beyond either species, a new form of life, the future of both races. And if the Sci-fian Empire knew, they would never stop hunting it. The moment that changed everything. Liara's body shook. She dropped to one knee, breathing heavily. The hunters surrounded her, weapons raised. Then, something happened. Her vision blurred. The world flashed. And suddenly, she wasn't seeing the present. She was seeing the future, thousands of years ahead. Cities that had never been built. Starships with no allegiance to human or Sci-fian. A new species born from her blood. And in the center of it all, her child. Not a human. Not a Sci-fian. The first of something greater. Then she snapped back to reality. And she knew. This war wasn't about survival anymore. This was about evolution. The Sci-fians weren't trying to stop a hybrid. They were trying to stop the next dominant species. The child was more than just a mix of two races. It was the future ruler of the galaxy. The final escape. Ethan ran toward Liara, grabbing her arm. We have to go. Now. But Liara didn't move. She was staring at the sky. Because something terrifying was happening. The Sci-fian fleet had stopped firing. Not because they were losing. Because something bigger was coming. A ship unlike any other. A warship so large it blocked out the stars. The Sci-fian Emperor himself had arrived. And he had one mission. Kill the child before it was born. War over a child. The sky was darkened by warships. The Sci-fian Emperor's flagship loomed above Earth, its massive silhouette blotting out the stars. This was no longer a hunt. No longer a skirmish. This was an execution. And the order was simple. Kill the hybrid before it is born. The Emperor's ultimatum. A hologram flickered to life over Earth's command center. The Sci-fian Emperor stood tall, his golden armor gleaming, his presence radiating power. His voice was calm, absolute, terrifying. Earth, this is your final warning. Surrender the traitor Liara and the abomination she carries. His reptilian eyes glowed with cold fire. If you refuse, we will not conquer. We will not negotiate. A pause. We will erase your world. Every city, every nation, every child. The threat was not empty. Everyone knew the Empire never bluffed. And yet, Earth did not respond. Because in that moment, the decision had already been made. Humanity fights back. On Earth's orbital station, Admiral Ren Carter watched the fleet above. Humanity had never fought the Sci-fian Empire head-on. Every strategist in history said they would lose. But today, they weren't just fighting for Earth. They were fighting for the future. He turned to his officers. Prepare the fleet. Sir, a young officer hesitated. Do we even have a chance? Ren's gaze was like steel. Not just a chance, he said. We have a purpose. And then, Earth's hidden war fleet launched into battle. The hybrid's first response. In the middle of the chaos, Liara fell to her knees. Pain tore through her body, but it wasn't from the battle. It was the child. It wasn't just sensing the war. It was responding. A rush of images flooded her mind. A future where Earth burned. A future where the hybrid never existed. A future where the Empire won. And in that moment, the child fought back. The impossible happens. On the battlefield, something shifted. The Sci-fierian warships stuttered. For a moment, just a moment, they hesitated. The pilots inside them froze, gripping their heads, gasping for breath. The Sci-fierians were experiencing something they had never felt before. Fear. Lyra's child, not even born yet, was touching their minds, forcing them to see something beyond themselves, forcing them to feel the future they were trying to destroy. The Emperor's eyes widened in horror. This cannot be. This wasn't just a child. It was an evolutionary event, a being that could reshape reality itself. And now he understood the truth. This war wasn't about protecting the Empire. It was about preventing its extinction. Cliffhanger. The final escape. Ethan grabbed Lyra's arm. You have to control it. Lyra gasped, struggling to stay upright. The child's power was too much. It was too aware. Too alive. The Sci-fierian fleet recovered. The Emperor clenched his fists. Destroy them. Now. 1,000 weapons locked onto Earth. 1,000 ships prepared to fire. Ethan looked at Lyra. Can you stop this? Lyra's glowing eyes met his. I don't have to. She placed a hand on her stomach. The child will. The sky erupted in light, and everything changed. The hybrid awakens. The sky erupted in chaos. Sci-fierian warships unleashed a storm of plasma fire toward Earth. Human defense fleets counterattacked, their weapons tearing into the invading force. But none of it mattered, because something far more powerful was waking, something that should not exist. The child's first act of power. Lyra's body burned with energy. She gasped, falling to her knees as waves of raw power rippled from her core. Ethan rushed to her side, scanning her vitals. His voice was shaking. Lyra, your body, your child. Lyra clenched her fists, her breath ragged. It's not just me, she whispered. And then, everything stopped. The battle freezes. In orbit, the Sci-fierian fleet suddenly halted. Pilots froze inside their cockpits. Weapons refused to fire. Even the Emperor himself staggered back, gripping his head in shock. A new force was spreading across the battlefield. It wasn't physical. It was something deeper, something primal, and it was coming from the child. The vision that shattered the Empire. For a moment, every Sci-fierian mind was linked. They saw something beyond reality. They saw themselves, centuries from now, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as the past. Because in the future they saw, their species did not exist anymore. Instead, they saw a new race, born from both human and Sci-fierian blood. The hybrids, millions of them, spreading across the stars, stronger, faster, perfect, a new species that would replace the old. And at the center of it all, the child, not just a being, a beginning, the first of something greater. The Emperor's fear. The Sci-fierian Emperor collapsed onto his throne, gasping for breath. He had never felt fear before. Now, it consumed him. This child wasn't a threat to his empire. It was a threat to their entire existence. If it lived, it would change everything. His claws tightened into fists. No, he growled. This cannot be allowed. He rose to his feet, his golden eyes burning with desperation. The hybrid dies. Now, he turned to his fleet. Fire EV or I thing, Earth's last defense. The Sci-fierian fleet recovered. Their paralysis had lasted only a moment, but it was enough. Now, they unleashed their full power. Plasma cannons ignited the sky. Planet cracker missiles descended toward Earth. Humanity's defenses were failing. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was extinction. Ethan grabbed Lyra's shoulders. Can your child stop this? He begged. Lyra's glowing eyes locked onto the sky. She placed a hand on her stomach. Then she whispered, It already has. The impossible happens. A pulse of energy exploded from Lyra's body. It spread through Earth, through the sky, through the void of space itself. And then, reality changed. The moment the war ended, the first Sci-fian warships began to vanish. Not explode, not burn, vanish. One by one, they disappeared into nothingness. The energy was rewriting existence itself, not just erasing the ships, but erasing their very presence from time. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. What is this? Lyra's voice was calm, absolute, final. It's not destroying them. She looked at him. It's undoing them. The Emperor's last words. The Sci-fian Emperor felt himself fading, his body dissolving, his empire vanishing from history. He tried to fight it. He tried to scream. But the hybrid's power was too great. As he disappeared, his final thought was not of victory, not of war, but of regret. We should have never feared them. We should have embraced them. And then, the Emperor of the Sci-fian Empire was gone, and with him, the last remnants of his ancient rule. A new era begins. The war was over. The Sci-fians no longer existed. And yet, something new had taken their place. Lyra stood, her breathing slow. Ethan looked at her. Is it over? Lyra closed her eyes. She could feel it now. The child had not just saved them. It had rewritten history itself. And from now on, the galaxy belonged to something new. A future where humans and Sci-fians were one. A future where the hybrid was the first of many. She turned to Ethan, her voice soft. It's not over. She placed a hand on her stomach. It's just the beginning. And in the distance, beyond the stars, something watched them. Something older than both species. Something that had been waiting for this moment. For the true evolution of life to begin. The end